The spaceship landed gently on the glowing blue fields of Eloria. A cool breeze moved across the grass, carrying scents Ravi had never smelled before. Strange flowers opened as if greeting them. Bright silver towers stood far beyond, shaped like spirals rising into the sky. Everything about this world looked soft, clean, and almost like a dream. Ravi stepped out of the ship, adjusting the strap on his translator device. His team, 6 humans in total, followed behind. All of them had been chosen for the first official cultural exchange between Earth and the royal planet of Eloria. The goal was simple: learn, share, and build peace. Ravi wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even the lead scientist. He was a language student from Earth. His specialty was understanding alien speech patterns. His accent in the trade language, however, was still strong. It didn't bother him, but he didn't know that someone else would notice it quite a lot. Group of Elorian nobles stood at the landing area, dressed in flowing robes that shimmered like water under the sun. Their eyes were large and bright. Their skin was a soft shade of teal. They had no hair but wore crowns and jewels that sparkled even without any light. In front of them stood the royal family. The king was tall and calm. The queen wore a peaceful expression. But it was the princess who drew the most attention. She had a proud smile and eyes that studied everything with sharp interest. Her name was Princess Zira. When Ravi and the team bowed slightly in greeting, Zira tilted her head and gave a nod. Her voice was calm, but her tone had a playful edge. "Welcome, visitors from Earth," she said in the trade language, slowly and clearly. "We hope you enjoy your stay. If you need help speaking, I will try to understand your charming sounds." The other Elorians smiled politely. Some of the humans chuckled. Ravi smiled too, but said nothing. That evening, the Earth team was shown their guest rooms inside a grand palace shaped like a tree, built of silver stone. The walls were covered with moving light patterns that changed like wind on water. Servants brought glowing fruit and soft drinks that sparkled inside the cup. As the humans gathered in the common room, their translator devices synced with the palace systems. Ravi sat in the corner with a small pad in his hand. He was listening. To the background sounds of the Elorian servants speaking among themselves, he heard a few of them laughing softly. "That one with the heavy tongue," one voice said. "I think the princess enjoyed teasing him." Ravi looked up, but stayed silent. He was used to this. His accent had always been different, even back home. Still, he had a strong memory. He remembered sounds easily, even if he didn't always say them perfectly the first time. That night, while others slept or relaxed, Ravi stayed awake. He brought out a small e-notebook and started reviewing notes he had made about Elorian grammar. The formal version, not the common trade tongue. Few humans bothered learning the native speech of Eloria. It was complex and old, but Ravi was curious. The next morning, the team was invited to a tour of the palace. Princess Zira herself joined them. She floated more than walked, her long robes flowing behind her like mist. She stopped beside Ravi and asked, "Tell me, Earth One, what is your name?" Ravi answered in the trade language. "My name is Ravi," she smiled. "Ah, I like how you bend the words. They come out like singing from a broken flute." A few nobles chuckled. Zira didn't sound cruel, but she was clearly amused. Ravi gave a polite nod. "Perhaps, but even broken flutes can make music." Zira raised her eyebrows slightly, not expecting the calm reply. She walked ahead without saying more. During the next few days, the humans gave small talks about Earth's history, food, art, and science. Each member of the team had their moment. Ravi was scheduled last. Before his turn, he practiced in the garden. He didn't practice the trade tongue, though. He practiced the native Elorian language, the one only royals and old scholars used now. He had found old recordings, poems, and chants stored in the palace library. Nobody noticed he was memorizing them. When he walked past Princess Zira one evening, she turned to him. "Still polishing your broken flute?" she asked softly. Ravi looked at her and smiled. "Yes," he said, "but now I'm learning the notes you left behind." Zira blinked once, unsure what he meant. He didn't explain. He simply walked away. The next morning would be the language exchange event. All humans would speak before the royal court. Nobles, scholars, and even young. Students would listen. Zira would sit beside her father, watching from her high seat. Ravi would be last to speak. And he had a plan. He knew Zira thought little of his speech. She believed humans could never master her language. But she didn't know how deeply he listened. She didn't know how much he respected the sound of her people's words. As night fell, Ravi sat in silence under a glowing tree in the garden. He whispered lines of an old Elorian poem into the wind, letting the words shape his breath. The leaves above shimmered slightly, as if listening too. Tomorrow he would no longer need to explain himself. He would speak, and she would hear. And maybe, just maybe, she would see him differently. The grand hall of Eloria's palace was filled with soft, golden light. Hundreds of glowing stones floated gently above, casting a warm and steady brightness over the room. Long silk banners in teal and silver hung from the tall walls. A line of Elorian nobles sat quietly, their eyes fixed on the front of the hall. Today was the cultural speech ceremony. Every human guest would give a short talk in the trade language, sharing stories about Earth. The Elorian court had gathered to listen, and the royal family was seated on the highest platform. At the center sat King Toran, his hands folded calmly. Beside him was Queen Maela, dressed in pale blue, and next to her sat Princess Zira. Her eyes scanned the stage below with interest and quiet amusement. She leaned slightly toward her father and whispered something. He smiled without reply. One by one, the humans stepped forward. First was Mara, a botanist. She spoke of earth plants that grew from frozen seeds. Her words were smooth, and the nobles nodded politely. Then came Thomas, a history teacher, who spoke about Earth's ancient pyramids and the stars above them. He had a soft accent, but his message was clear. Ravi stood near the side wall, waiting for his turn. He held no paper, no screen, just his own thoughts and the old Elorian lines in his mind. Zira glanced toward him briefly, then looked away. She seemed bored. The third human, Joe, shared a short poem about rivers. The fourth spoke about human music and played a soft recording. One by one, the talks ended. Courtiers clapped lightly, but their faces showed little emotion. Finally, a soft chime rang. The hall grew silent. A voice announced, "Next, Ravi from Earth." Ravi stepped forward slowly, his heart steady. He walked to the front and looked up at the royal family. He saw the princess watching him closely now, lips curved in a faint smile. Perhaps she expected more broken notes. He took a slow breath. At first, he spoke in the trade tongue. "Greetings. I come from a world far from here, a world with many voices, many tongues, and many sounds." He paused, then smiled gently. "But today I will not speak as a visitor. Today I will speak as a learner of your voice." He closed his eyes briefly, then began to speak again. But now, the words changed. This was no longer the trade language. He had shifted to Old Elorian. The air in the hall grew still. The first sentence flowed like wind through leaves. It was a formal greeting, one that hadn't been spoken in centuries except during royal rituals. His pronunciation was smooth, his rhythm calm and respectful. His tone held no pride, only care. He continued, telling a short story about a young child who listened to the sky. Each line was shaped in Elorian poetic form, something few outsiders could understand, let alone speak. Whispers moved through the crowd. Some nobles leaned forward. One older scholar blinked in surprise, then nodded slowly. Zira's smile had faded. Her eyes were wide now, locked on Ravi's face. He spoke for 2 more minutes, finishing with a closing line used in royal oaths. When he stopped, silence followed. A long silence. No one clapped. No one moved. Then the king nodded once. He placed his hand over his chest in a quiet sign of deep respect. Others followed. Some nobles stood. Zira did not stand. She walked down the steps from her seat and moved straight toward Ravi. Her eyes held a strange look, curious, confused, almost unsure. She stopped 2 steps away from him. Then she spoke. Not in the trade, tongue, but in fast, complex native Elorian. "What path did you walk to find those words?" she asked. "They are not taught, not even in your records." Ravi replied in the same language, calmly and clearly. "I listened to your songs, I listened to your wind, and I remembered." She tilted her head, studying him. Then she spoke again, faster this time. She used a rare style, full of difficult phrasing and deep meanings. Words that only high nobles spoke during ancient debates. Ravi answered again, his voice steady. Each reply matched her tone, her rhythm, her depth. The hall remained silent. Some Elorians looked at each other in disbelief. A few placed hands to their mouths. Never had a human replied to the princess in such a way, and certainly not in her own speech form. Zira blinked slowly. For the first time, she was speechless. She took a breath, then gave a single respectful nod. "You studied well?" she said finally, her voice quiet. Ravi bowed lightly. "I listened with care." She turned and walked away without another word. Her expression gave away nothing, but her silence said more than her teasing ever had. As Ravi stepped back to join his team, Thomas whispered, "What just happened?" Ravi smiled a little. "Just a small talk," he replied. That night, the halls of the palace were filled with quiet discussion. Some nobles asked for recordings of Ravi's speech. A few scholars came forward wanting to speak with him. Servants passed by and bowed more deeply than before. But most interesting of all, Princess Zira did not make a single joke about his voice that evening. She sat in the garden alone, looking up at the stars, and for the first time, she wondered if a human had just walked across a bridge she thought was impossible. The sun rose slowly over the shining towers of Eloria. Its light touched the crystal roofs and made them glow like calm fire. The air was filled with soft music from floating bells, and people across the capital dressed in bright colors. It was the day of the Festival of Memory, the most important event in Elorian culture. This festival was held once every 5 years. It was a time to honor history, respect tradition, and remember the voices of the past. All nobles, scholars, and guests were invited to speak, sing, or perform something meaningful. It was not a contest. It was a gift to memory. Princess Zira had performed in every festival since she was a child. Her voice was known for its beauty. This time, she would sing a royal lullaby in Old Elorian, a song passed from queen to queen. Human visitors were also invited to take part. They could choose to speak, play music, or tell a story. Most of them felt nervous, not wanting to offend the ancient traditions. Thomas and Mara chose to perform together, sharing a soft earth melody on a small hand harp. Others decided to simply watch, but Ravi signed up to perform alone. He gave no details. When asked, he only said, "It's something I want to share." Many whispered about it. Some nobles were curious. Some were doubtful. Princess Zira heard about it during morning practice and said nothing. She only raised one eyebrow and turned away. The ceremony was held in the Sky Garden, a wide-open space on top of the palace. It was shaped like a circle, with a pool in the center that reflected the sky above. Crystal chairs were placed in rings. The royal family sat at the front, and nobles filled the seats behind them. As the ceremony began, dancers moved gently around the pool. Elorian children sang in chorus, their voices light as mist. A scholar spoke of the first kings. Another elder played a wind instrument that made notes like falling stars. Then came the royal performance. Zira stepped forward, dressed in a deep teal robe that sparkled without light. Her voice filled the garden as she sang the royal lullaby. The notes rose like birds and settled gently in the air. Even the wind seemed to slow. When she finished, the crowd remained silent for a few breaths before bowing their heads in respect. Then the list moved forward. Ravi was called last. He stepped into the center, wearing a plain earth suit with a soft blue scarf around his neck. No music followed him. No dancers came with him. He stood alone and faced the crowd. He began by placing his hand on his chest, then bowed, a respectful greeting in Elorian form. Then he started to speak, but not in the trade tongue. His voice rang out in old Elorian again. But this time, it was different. It was not just speech. It was shaped in the rhythm of ancient stories. His words followed the style of wind tales, a long-lost form of Elorian poetry that had not been used for 100 years. He told a Baidiur tale, not of Eloria, but of Earth. It was about a small boy who lived near a forest, a boy who could not speak the way others did. His words came out slow and his voice was strange. People laughed. They pushed him away. But the boy listened to the forest. He heard the wind speak. He heard the trees whisper. He repeated their songs until his voice matched theirs. One day, the forest grew quiet. Something was wrong. The people did not know how to understand the silence, but the boy did. He stepped forward and sang the words of the wind. He spoke the language of trees. And through his voice, the forest came alive again. Ravi's story ended with a gentle phrase in ancient royal form, used only to honor ancestors. The garden was silent. No one moved. No one laughed. Even the youngest Elorians watched him with wide eyes. Princess Zira stood slowly. Her face showed no pride, no teasing smile, only calm thought. She walked forward and stood beside him, her voice low and soft. "That form you used," she said in Elorian. "No one has spoken it since my great-grandmother's time. Who taught it to you?" Ravi answered gently. "No one taught. I listened." Zira looked at him closely. "You sang our past better than some of our own. How?" Ravi looked at the pool in the center. "Because your past sings like ours. All memories have the same heart." The nobles stood. Some bowed. Others placed their hands on their chest. A few elders had tears in their eyes. Even the king gave a deep nod, the kind given only to honored guests. That evening, the festival ended, with lights and food. But the talk across the garden was not about Zira's song. It was about Ravi's story. Elorians asked him to repeat parts of it. Young speakers asked for help with pronunciation. Some even offered him scrolls that had been locked away, and for the first time, Zira did not walk ahead of him. She walked beside him, not as someone above, but as someone who now wanted to listen. The next morning, the palace was quiet. Even the birds outside the crystal windows seemed to sing in softer tones. The sky above Eloria was covered in a gentle gold haze. It was the day after the Festival of Memory, and everyone was still talking about what had happened. Inside the royal court, nobles sat in small groups. Some read old scrolls, others discussed ancient language forms. But one name kept coming up: Ravi, the human who had spoken their forgotten words with care and depth. Princess Zira stood alone on her balcony. She watched the gardens below, her hands folded. For the first time in many days, her mind was not filled with sharp jokes or clever replies. It was filled with questions. How did he learn those forms? Why did he speak like someone from the royal past? And how did his voice carry, feeling in a language that was not his own? She didn't feel angry. She didn't feel embarrassed. She felt curious, and that was something rare for her. Later that day, she asked for Ravi to meet her in the royal garden. Ravi arrived in simple clothes again. His face was calm. He bowed respectfully and waited. Zira didn't speak right away. She walked ahead, leading him down a path lined with soft, glowing plants. After a while, she stopped near a small fountain. "Do you know why your accent bothered me in the beginning?" she asked without turning. Ravi paused before answering. "Because it reminded you of people who didn't try to understand your world." She looked at him. "Yes, many outsiders visit. They learn the trade tongue and call it enough. They never ask about the real speech. The one our hearts use." Ravi nodded. "I wanted to hear that heart, so I listened." Zira sat on a smooth stone near the fountain. "But you didn't just listen. You studied our royal forms. Some of those lines haven't been spoken out loud in many years. Even I don't use them." Ravi sat across from her. "I found old recordings. I also watched how you spoke, the way you shaped each word. Your rhythm taught me more than any scroll." Zira gave a small smile. "So I was your teacher without knowing." "Yes," Ravi said. "Even when you teased me." She looked at the water and said nothing for a while. Then she asked, "Do you know what those forms mean to us?" Ravi nodded slowly. "They are more than language. They hold honor, memory, family. They are the voice of your spirit." Zira's eyes softened. "Exactly. That is why I was surprised. You didn't just repeat sounds. You gave them meaning." The garden was quiet, except for the sound of the water. After a pause, Zira stood. "There is something I must do," she said. "Not just for you, but for all of Eloria." Ravi stood as well. "What is it?" She turned to him. "I want you to speak again, but this time in front of the Council of Voices. They are the keepers of all Elorian speech. They must hear what I heard." Ravi's heart beat faster. He had spoken before crowds before, but this would be different. The Council of Voices included language masters and the oldest speakers of the royal tongue. Some were known to reject, even nobles for poor form. Still, he nodded. "I will try." Zira smiled. "You will not try. You will speak, and I believe they will listen." Word spread quickly. A human would speak before the council. Some nobles were excited. Others were unsure. Some even thought it was a mistake. No outsider had ever been asked to speak there. The council chamber was shaped like a circle, with high walls made of clear crystal. The sound inside bounced gently, making each word clear and sharp. 12 council members sat in a ring, their robes marked with ancient symbols. Princess Zira stood with Ravi, her expression proud but calm. One of the elders spoke. "You have been brought here with royal request. Speak, and let your voice be judged." Ravi stepped forward. He did not rush. His first words were a respectful greeting in the softest form of royal Elorian, used only when asking for permission to speak in sacred halls. The council members listened without expression. Then he began a short tale. This one was about 2 stars that danced across the sky but could not understand each other's light. They moved in silence for years, until one day they learned each other's rhythm and created a new path together. The story was told in 5 parts, each in a different Elorian speech form. The last section was spoken in the echo voice style, slow, deep, and filled with space between each word. When he finished, the room was still. No one moved. Then, one by one, the council members placed their hands to their chests. The lead elder spoke. You do not speak as a stranger. You speak as one who listened, and that is the highest honor of our tongue." Zira looked at Ravi, and her smile now had no edge, no pride, only peace. As they left the chamber, nobles bowed as they passed. A few even spoke to Ravi in old phrases. His replies were clear, respectful, and steady. That night, the royal family gathered for a quiet dinner. King Toran looked at Ravi and said, "You have given a gift that cannot be measured. You did not change your voice. You gave it meaning." Zira raised her glass. "To Ravi, who heard our heart when no one else did." Ravi raised his too. "To Eloria, who shared her heart when I least expected." There was no teasing now. The princess who once laughed at his voice now respected his silence, his effort, and the soul behind every word. The sky above Eloria turned a soft orange as the twin moons began to rise. Gentle winds passed through the palace gardens, carrying the light scent of blooming night flowers. It was peaceful, but something had changed. Not just in the air, but in the way people looked at Ravi now. No longer just a visitor from Earth, Ravi was now respected by Elorians. Some nobles called him Voice Walker because of his way with words. Students followed him around, asking about both Earth and Elorian language. Scholars invited him to their libraries. He had become a quiet star among stars, but Ravi remained humble. He still wore simple clothes. He still walked alone at times. He still took time to listen to the wind and the voices it carried. One evening, as the sky turned deep purple, Princess Zira asked Ravi to meet her in the quiet corner of the moon garden. It was her favorite place, a small space filled with glowing plants and a clear view of the sky. A silver bench stood beneath a tall light tree. When Ravi arrived, Zira was already there, watching the moons. "You're becoming famous," she said with a small smile. Ravi gave a soft laugh. "I never asked for that." Zira nodded. "But you earned it." They sat together side by side without speaking for a while. Then Zira turned toward him. "Tell me something. Why did you care so much about learning our true voice? Others were happy just speaking the trade tongue." Ravi thought for a moment before answering. "When I was young," he said, "I struggled to speak even my own language clearly. My words came out slow. People laughed. Some thought I was not smart, but I knew how to listen. And when I listened, I learned more than words. I learned feeling." Zira watched him quietly. "So when I heard your voice," Ravi continued, "I wanted to understand it fully, not just the shape of it, but the soul inside it. Because I know what it feels like when others don't listen." Zira lowered her eyes. "That's something we often forget," she said softly. "To us, language is pride. It's royal. It sets us apart. But maybe it also closes doors." Ravi turned to her. "It can, or it can open them if used kindly." She smiled, not her usual teasing smile, but something softer. "There's something else," she said. "In the royal family, we're taught to speak without mistakes. Every tone, every pause must be perfect. If we fail, it's seen as weakness. That's why I laughed at your accent in the beginning. It wasn't cruel, it was fear. Ravi was quiet. I feared that someone like you, who hadn't trained like us, could walk into our world and shake it," Zira continued. "But you didn't shake it with force. You moved it with care." The words hung in the air like the scent of night flowers. Ravi looked at her. "That's the same reason I respected your speech, because I knew how hard you worked to master it. You may have teased me, but your voice always held strength." Zira stood and walked a few steps forward. The moonlight lit her face. She looked calm. "You know, Ravi," she said, "there's something I've never done before. I've never asked someone from another world to teach me something." Ravi raised an eyebrow. What do you want to learn? She turned and looked directly at him. I want to learn one of your languages. Not the easy one, not the common one. I want to learn the one that shaped your voice. Ravi smiled. It's not easy. It has its own rhythm, many sounds. But if you listen with care, you'll understand it. I have a good teacher, she said. From that night onward, they began meeting often in the garden. Zira would try to say words in Ravi's native tongue, and he would gently correct her. Sometimes she mixed up sounds and laughed at herself. Sometimes she got them right, and Ravi clapped softly. It became a new kind of exchange, not just between worlds, but between two people learning to walk side by side. One day, Zira brought him an old scroll. This, she said, is a speech written by one of our oldest queens. It was never spoken aloud again. I want you to read it. Ravi opened the scroll. The writing was full of forgotten symbols. He read slowly, carefully. It was a message of peace, meant to be spoken to outsiders, but it had never been shared, because no outsider had ever stayed long enough to earn it. Zira looked at him. Will you speak it with me? One line each, you in our voice, me in yours. Ravi nodded, and they began. Their voices flowed together, Elorian and Earth tongue, line by line, word by word. Two voices, once distant, now close. When they finished, the garden was silent. Then Zira whispered, This is what it means to understand, beyond words. Ravi looked at her. Yes, this is what peace sounds like. And as the moons watched from above, no accent remained between them, only meaning. The peace between the humans and Elorians was growing stronger. After the Festival of Memory, after the meeting with the council, and after many nights of shared words in the garden, things had changed. Ravi was now welcomed with warmth. He was no longer seen as just a visitor. Some nobles even called him friend of the crown. But peace is not something that comes without resistance. In the high chambers of the palace, where old voices still whispered behind closed doors, not everyone agreed with the friendship between Ravi and the royal family. Some nobles believed traditions were being broken. A few thought the princess was giving too much respect to someone who did not belong to their world. Among them was Lord Kale, an older noble with deep roots in Elorian history. He had once trained students in language and law. His pride in Elorian customs was strong, and he did not like how Ravi, a human with an earth-born accent, had entered sacred spaces and earned praise. One evening, Lord Kale stood before the king and made a formal request. Your Majesty, he said, this visitor from Earth has been honored with high words. He has spoken before the council and walked among our old songs. But he has not taken the echo trial. The court fell silent. Even, Princess Zira turned to face Kale. The echo trial was not just a test. It was one of the most sacred challenges in Elorian culture. It took place in a hidden chamber deep inside the palace, called the Echo Room. There, a speaker had to speak the truth in the native tongue. Every word had to be exact. Every pause had to match the rhythm of ancient speech. More than that, the room itself was alive with old energy. If someone lied or spoke without full meaning, the chamber would reflect it with sound. A single mistake could end the trial. Very few Elorians had taken the echo trial. None from another world had ever even stood at its door. Princess Zira stepped forward. He is not here to prove anything, Kale replied. And yet he has changed. Everything. If his voice truly holds meaning, let the echo room show it. The king looked at Ravi. Ravi stood calmly. If the trial must be faced, then I will face it. Zira looked at him with concern. You don't have to do this. No, Ravi said, but I want to. Later that night, Zira met Ravi in the moon garden. The echo room is not like the council, she said. It listens with more than ears. You cannot prepare lines. You must speak from your heart, without error. Ravi sat quietly. Then, I will speak from the same place I learned from, listening. Zira looked at him. I believe in you. But remember, truth is not just what you feel. It's what you give completely. The next morning, the palace gathered in silence. Only a few were allowed to watch the trial from above, through a clear dome. Zira was one of them. So was Lord Kale. The echo room was a round chamber made of smooth crystal. The walls reflected, even the smallest sound. The floor glowed with a soft light that changed based on the speaker's voice. Ravi entered alone. A voice from above said, You may speak now. Tell us your truth, in the voice of Eloria. Ravi stood in the center. The room closed around him. There was no echo yet, only stillness. He began with a deep breath. Then, in slow and steady old Elorian, he spoke. He did not give a poem. He did not tell a story. He spoke of his journey. He spoke of his first day on Eloria, of being laughed at, of walking in silence. He spoke of the nights he listened, the recordings he studied, the wind he tried to follow. He spoke of Zira's teasing and how her voice helped him understand what pride and beauty meant in a language. He spoke of respect, not the kind given by titles, but the kind earned by effort. He spoke of peace, not through power, but through shared words. As he spoke, the floor began to glow brighter. Then he said something that made the room hum gently. I am not here to become one of you. I am here because I heard you, and I stayed because I saw you. The crystal walls gave off a soft sound, like wind passing through trees. Zira, watching from above, felt a tightness in her chest. It was not fear, it was feeling. She saw that Ravi's voice had filled the room, not just with words, but with honesty. Then the room began to glow with full light. It was a sign of acceptance. A final sound filled the air, one long, clear note. The room had accepted his truth. The trial was past. Ravi bowed his head. He left the room without a single word more. The nobles watching stood in silence. Even Lord Kale gave a respectful nod. Later that day, Zira met him near the garden. She looked at him for a long time, then said, You spoke not as an outsider, not as a prince, not even as a student. You spoke as someone who truly belongs. Ravi gave a quiet smile. I spoke as someone who listened. Zira nodded. And because of that, I will listen too. As the sun set behind the silver towers, there was no longer a question of whether Ravi's voice belonged. It had passed through the hardest trial. It had been heard by the deepest walls of Eloria, and it had come out with light. The morning sun shone brightly over the palace of Eloria. Light danced on the silver towers, making the city sparkle like a field of stars. Today was a special day. It was the day of peace and friendship between Earth and Eloria. A day when words and actions would build bridges for the future. The great hall was filled with nobles, scholars, and guests from many worlds. The air buzzed with quiet excitement. At the front of the room, King Toran sat tall and proud. Queen Maela beside him held her hands calmly. Princess Zira, dressed in deep teal robes, stood with a thoughtful expression. She looked toward the entrance, waiting. Ravi walked slowly into the hall. His steps were steady and calm. He wore a simple tunic from Earth, but with a small Elorian symbol pinned on his chest, a sign of honor and trust. The crowd welcomed him with soft applause. Today, Ravi would speak not just as a visitor or a student. He would speak as a bridge between two worlds. He stepped onto the platform. The room grew quiet. Ravi took a deep breath and looked out over the crowd. Then he spoke, not in trade language, not in just Elorian, but in both languages mixed together. He began with a story about two stars, once far apart, that danced in silence. Each star shone with its own light, proud and bright, but the stars could not find their way to each other. They spoke in different songs, in different rhythms. For many years, they moved alone. One day, one star learned the language of the other. It learned to listen. It learned to speak in rhythms that the other could understand. Slowly, the stars drew closer. They began to shine together, creating a new light that was stronger than before. Ravi's voice carried hope. His words wove a path of peace and friendship. He told how humans and Elorians could be like those stars, different but connected. Princess Zira watched him with pride. She felt the truth in his words. She saw the crowd nod in agreement, eyes bright with new understanding. When Ravi finished, silence filled the room. Then the king stood. "Today we celebrate not only a visitor, but a new voice," King Toran said. "A voice that speaks with respect, with honor, and with truth. Ravi, you have shown us that language is more than sound. It is connection." Queen Myla smiled softly. "May this day mark the beginning of a long friendship." Princess Zira stepped forward. She looked at Ravi and spoke in her native tongue, slowly and clearly. "Your voice has crossed worlds. You have spoken our language with heart. You have taught me that true understanding comes from listening." Ravi bowed his head. "I have learned from you, not only your words, but your spirit." The crowd applauded. Many stood, their faces shining. After the ceremony, the palace gardens were filled with laughter and conversation. People from Earth and Eloria shared food and stories. Music played softly as new friendships blossomed. Zira found Ravi near the silver fountain. She smiled warmly. "Do you remember the first day you spoke here?" she asked. Ravi laughed softly. "Yes. Your teasing was hard to forget." She laughed too, the sound light and free. "But you taught me something important," she said. "That words can build bridges and hearts can change." Ravi looked at the sky. "And I learned that no matter where we come from, we all want to be heard." As the twin moons rose over Eloria, Ravi and Zira stood side by side. Two worlds, once distant, now connected by a single voice, a voice that spoke not just words but hope.